We have gone through some of it already, but I'll just give you a recap of what we have seen so far. We are going to have a look at two different competing IoT network architecture standards. Both of them are quite relevant, and there are many companies which are pushing for either of those two standards. So we'll look at two of them. Okay. This is it. Yes, I put it in full screen mode. Is the full screen mode visible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that is there, and we have also seen what is the difference between IT and the IoT systems, how they are different from the conventional, or how IoT systems are different from your conventional IT systems. IoT is a lot different when compared to traditional IT architectures because of these reasons. We have gone through all of this. Support for legacy devices is an important aspect. Security constraints, data volume, so on and so forth. We have several issues which we deal with. We have discussed this in the previous class. And we have also seen that there are two possible comparing, like two major IoT architectures which are competing with each other for dominance. This is similar to what you may have found in the case of standard was that you had with the Blu-ray disc and the HD that they had for some point of time. So there is always some kind of a competition whenever new standards are evolving, and you will find that several competing companies with different technologies will try to push for their own standards. So obviously here also you have two different consortia which are competing with each other to come up with a better platform for IoT. One is the 1M2M consortium, and the other is IoT World Forum consortium. So, 1 second. So we have seen what is 1M2M standard. We have also seen which are the companies which were a part of the 1M2M standard architecture design. Indian company, like Indian partners are also a part of the whole process. So you can see our TSDSI is also a part of the whole standard designing process. There are several other companies also which have kind of participated in it, but these are the standard making bodies, including the one from India. So there are several companies which have participated in this, and they have come up with some standard things or standard rules which will govern the IoT architectures. Okay. Please remember, the reason why we need to have a standardized IoT architecture is to make sure that all manufacturers are able to build devices which can talk to each other without any difficulty. If different devices are using different architectures, they will not be able to communicate with each other effectively. They will not be able to work or integrate with each other more effectively. So there are several problems that will arise if you have devices which are of widely differing standards. So that is why there is always a push to have a standard which is something which is followed across the world, or at least in the majority of the countries. So same thing that you have with 3G, 4G technology. Even now we have the problems with 5G. So standardization is still going on. So this is one such case where we are trying to get a standard IoT architecture up and running. It may not be good in all the cases, but it should be something which should be supported or adhered to by most of the manufacturers, because it helps them build devices which are interoperable, and it also saves a lot of time for the developers because it helps them build systems a lot more quicker and deploy them a lot faster. So the major goal is to create a common services layer. This is the major goal of M2M. But eventually it kind of evolved more and more into this, and we kind of have a situation where the one M2M architecture is developing standards to allow interoperability at all levels. Because we were actually, initially they started out with a very limited mandate, but now they are looking at kind of expanding the whole system to such a way that, in such a way that they are able to kind of design operating standards which will work across the IoT stack. So this is one example. Okay, so just let me come out. Okay, how many of you know what is an HVAC system? Can you see a show of hands? How many of you know what HVAC stands for? Anyone? Show of hands, please. No, nobody knows what HVAC is. Or am I not audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear.
Okay. So HVAC actually stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Okay. So typically these are called as building controls, and they are kind of very common in countries which are of extreme climates. So if you are going to a very hot country or a very cold country, HVAC systems are very popular. So this is like an integrated control which will ensure that the temperature, humidity, lighting, all those things are kind of maintained at the optimum level within a large building. So heating, ventilation, air conditioning. So you will find them in most of the countries in the Gulf. You will find them in countries like US, Canada, etc., where temperatures can go to extremes. So that is where HVAC systems come into picture. Okay. So that is the case study that we are looking at. We are trying to automate a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system by kind of connecting it to wireless sensors. That is your goal. Okay. And you want to deploy sensors that use LoRa WAN kind of connectivity. LoRa is something that you will be hearing a lot in the near future. This is like a long-range wireless kind of a protocol. You can have LoRa devices also which you can buy, and you can communicate with them over a longer distance than which was available earlier. Like you can have LoRa devices which can communicate over a range of a kilometer without you having to connect it to the cloud. You can directly communicate with your system which is lying nearly a kilometer away. So that is the advantage of LoRa. Have you done something with LoRa networks before? How many of you have worked with LoRa? Show of hands, please. How many of you have heard of LoRa? I mean, like how many of, at least you have heard of LoRa before? Nobody heard of LoRa also?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Oh. I was expecting you people would have already got all the hang of all these things. Okay. Okay, so that kind of complicates things a little bit, but no problem. LoRa, you can think of LoRa as a, you heard of Zigbee, right? Have you heard of Zigbee?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Again, Zigbee is also like a wireless communication standard. You have like the cheapest one that you can find is the I think ASK wireless modules are available. So you can use those RF communication modules that you see. So those are some type of techniques, and then you have things which are better than that, which is like LoRa. So using LoRa, you can actually communicate small amounts of data over much longer distances than was otherwise possible. So that is the main idea of LoRa type systems. Okay, LoRa, as it's given in the slide below, that it is basically a low power or long. It basically stands for long range. So it's and it uses little kind of less amount of power also. Typically what happens is that when you have a very large distance to cover, your transmission power also needs to be proportionately larger. So if you want to transmit something for say 50 meters, you require lesser amount of power to transmit, which basically means that your battery will consume less amount of energy. If you want to transmit the same amount of information over 500 meters, you will use up much larger amount of energy, so your battery will not last as long. But if you want to transmit the same information over a kilometer away, your battery will lose charge much faster because you are transmitting it at a much higher power, and the power gets attenuated by the time it reaches there, 1 kilometer away. LoRa tries to minimize that problem. The idea of LoRa is to transmit data like not at a very fast rate, very small amounts of data over very long ranges, at the same time conserving as much power as possible. So it kind of compromises the bandwidth and the data rate with respect to power. So it's kind of a trade-off that you get. But LoRa devices can be very helpful if you are transmitting data from places which are very remotely located. For example, you are putting your sensor in a forest. So it may not be possible for you to have a kind of multi-hop kind of a system within a forest. So you may have one transmitter, you may have transmitters located all over the place, but you may have a central hub or something like that at much longer intervals. So in that case, it becomes a lot more easier to use things like LoRa because you can locate much lesser number of hubs to process all the data which is coming from the individual nodes. So that is one major advantage that you get out of this. So imagine in this case that your building is very large, we typically try to use LoRaWAN. Okay. So unfortunately, the problem is that the LoRaWAN protocol stack and the BSEnet. BSEnet is again another communication protocol that people use for developing building automation and controls. Again, as I said, building automation and control is a superset which consists of the HVAC system. Okay, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems are typically controlled by building automation and control networks. HVAC is a system. Building automation and control networks are the networks which control these systems. Right, so there are several major companies which work on building automation and HVAC systems, etc. You have companies like Siemens, ABB, all these people actually work in HVAC systems in a big way. So assume that you want to use LoRaWAN and the existing system runs on BSEnet. So how do you integrate all of them? So to integrate all of them, what happens is that you use the 1M2M service architecture. So in that case, what will happen is that you can generate the RESTful APIs. You can generate RESTful APIs, which you've heard of APIs, right? How many of you have heard of
Yes,
API?
sir.
I think most of you may have heard of what is API. You may also be in a position to use APIs, write APIs for systems, or maybe at least use them. Should be feasible. So what this does is that you can make RESTful APIs which can use the typical internet connection to access, use, and interpret the data which is coming from different kinds of networks. So you do not have to make change to the overall system which is already being deployed, but you can just add an additional layer on top of it with the help of RESTful APIs. What does that actually mean? It means that you may be having some central computers which are kind of doing the building automation and control system. And you may have LoRaWAN hubs which are kind of collecting the data and using the data from LoRaWAN network. So you just put RESTful APIs on both ends and they will be able to communicate with each other without any problems. So there will be seamless integration between two different, completely, entirely independent and different kind of systems with the help of these RESTful APIs. So that is how 1M2M kind of things of working. You do not have to replace the entire HVAC network that you have. You do not have to replace the entire LoRaWAN network you have. You are not constrained by the hardware. All those things can be taken care with the help of this service-oriented architecture, SOA, or basically the architecture that the 1M2M system proposes. Interoperability between different systems and the systems which are already existing for a long period of time also. So legacy devices, everything can be just incorporated into the new network just by adding a layer of APIs. So that is one major advantage that 1M2M kind of envisages. Okay. So let's go to the main elements of it. Do you have any questions so far? Did I make any sense at all? I'm kind of assuming that you have a basic understanding of what a network is, what a protocol is, and so on. I hope you are okay with it. If you have any queries, please go ahead and ask before we go into details. Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, then I think I can just ask a couple of questions. Okay. So number 12, Sneha, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me what is a protocol?
Sir? Protocol, sir. Sir, a set of rules for transmitting data between devices, sir. Sir, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you. What protocols on which internet?
Sir?
You heard of something called internet, no?
Yes, sir.
So what are the protocols which underlie the internet?
Sir, that network layers in the layers, sir.
Okay, anyway, no issues. I'll just ask somebody else this question. Let's see, Nikhil A, number 38.
Hi, yes, sir.
Yeah, what are the protocols that underlie the working of an internet?
Yes, sir. Sir, you mean like HTTP, sir?
Okay, and
Then
okay, anyway, leave it, Nikhil, it's okay. I'll just go to Srivatsan.
Yes, sir.
Number 35. Yes.
Hello.
Can you tell me what is TCP?
TCP, sir. Transmission Control Protocol.
And why is it important for internet?
I need abbreviation, sir.
Anything?
No, sir.
Let's see. Harshavardhini. Harshavardhini, number 33.
Yes, sir.
Yes. What is TCP?
So it's transmission control protocol. We basically use it to transmit the information packets to the correct IP address.
Okay, and then what does IP do? What is IP?
So, IP is the mission's computer system's address, IP address.
No, no.
It's
What does it
internet
stand for?
protocol.
So what does it do? What does
Internet
it?
protocol. So it governs the format of data which is sent through the internet or the
And
network that
TCP
we
does?
use. It governs the format of data that is sent through the internet.
That is what IP does. And then what does TCP do?
So, it's work to transmit the packets to the correct IP using the IP.
Okay. Okay, fine. So, you people have done some course on digital communication so far? Have you?
No, sir.
No. So I mean, like, have you done any course on communication so far? Because I am assuming here that because you are in third year, you may have some understanding of how communication systems work and how digital communication works and how basic embedded systems work and so on. So
We had software defined radios, but that's more of the physical aspect of it.
okay, did you implement any protocol stack using software defined radio?
No, sir. It was theoretical.
Because the thing is, computer networks, have you done any course on computer networks?
That is this semester, sir.
So so you're learning computer networks.
Yes, sir.
And who's taking that course?
Mr. Gandhiraj.
Okay, so have you started with OSI layers or are you kind of directly going in?
Yes, sir. We have just started.
Okay, fine. Actually, this should have come after it, but anyway, by the end of this semester, I think you should have a good understanding. So no problem. So we'll continue with where we left off. The idea is that when you have an M2M kind of a system, you have diverse applications. So you can see here, you have automotive, home, energy. So different applications are there. So when you're looking at the M2M IoT architecture, you call this as the applications layer. That is the top level of the protocol stack. So you can have diverse set of applications for IoT, right? Because IoT is not constrained to work only in 1 or 2 or 3 different domains. IoT basically means you could use it for your own home applications. You could be trying to use IoT for measuring the level of water in your tank. You could be using IoT for tracking vehicles. So anything is possible using IoT. So there is no possible way in which you can create independent or individual stacks for different kinds of applications, because there are infinite number of applications you can think of. So what we do is that we consider these layers that actually deal with the application as the topmost layer. So that is where you can actually customize and create your own APIs and your own interfaces, etc., to apply to your own requirements, right? But below that, the things which are at the device level and the things that are at the network level need to have some kind of commonality. Only then you will be able to, if you are a manufacturer, you will be able to manufacture devices, or if you are a network service provider, you will be able to provide services which can be used by these IoT networks. So there has to be some kind of standardization at the lower levels, and that is what you are seeing here, the services layer, right? So if you look at the services layer, you will be able to see that these are all common to all kinds of applications. So does not matter what kind of application you use, you still use the same type of service layer, you use the same communication protocols and technologies, you use same types of network architecture, and you use similar type of edge nodes or similar type of devices. You may have a different amount of RAM, or you may have a different processor, or you may have a different brand that you are trying to use. But if you kind of peel out all the layers, you will find that they work on exactly similar communication platforms, they use very similar type of, you may say, at the device level, at the kernel level, they have the same kind of message transmission that is happening, so that any person can actually deal with those devices and they can integrate it into their own system. The operating systems that are lying at the devices may be different, but when the communication goes out of it or comes into the device, you will find that it will be in the same format all throughout. So it does not matter if you are using a Raspberry Pi or a Latte Panda or an Arduino, you will be, a message that is sent from the transmitter will reach all of these in the same way, same information content will be there, and it will be taken in the same manner inside. So that is the importance of having a common layer which governs all these kind of communications. It does not matter what device you are using, how powerful it is, how much power it consumes, as long as you have the same way of talking to different systems, this should be fine. That is the idea. Okay, that is why we are saying that we have a common services horizontal framework, which basically means that across applications you share the same communication protocols, you share the same services that are being provided, and you will be able to you make use of them for all kinds of applications. So this makes it a lot more easier for you to work with as far as scaling is concerned, or as far as the deployment issues are concerned, right? Because you have a standardized set of commands which can be used for all the applications. So these are the three main elements. The third one is obviously the network layer, where the applications use the APIs to communicate to sensors. Sensors also use APIs, push the data into the cloud or into the server that you have, and from there also everything happens with the help of APIs. So in that way, there are three major parts to the system: applications layer, the services layer, and the network layer. So we call this, this is a kind of something which is referred to as the services oriented architecture, SOAs. Okay. So there are several alternative ways in which this is being implemented. One is with the help of something called microservices, and the second option that you see is the help of containers. You have heard of containerization, Kubernetes basically. Virtual machines, those kind of things you have heard of, VMs.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So you have the containerization process which happens with the help of Kubernetes, etc., which can also help in these kind of activities. Okay, so all these microservices, Kubernetes, hypervisor type environments which uses VM, so all these kind of help in implementing such architectures. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. We have already seen this. There are three aspects: application, services, and the network layer. We start with the applications layer, where we are actually trying to see the applications. Okay, so here what we are talking about is the application layer protocols, which actually integrate with the business intelligence type applications. What do you mean by business intelligence type systems? What it means is that you are talking at the higher level of applications, where we are not talking, please remember, we'll be using the terms northbound and southbound in many cases. Northbound is when you are moving to the higher levels of abstraction, right? So for example, when you are moving higher up, so say you want to give a understanding of how the system is working to your CEO. Okay, so he is sitting at the top of the hierarchy. He doesn't want to know what is the kind of what is the power consumption of your Raspberry Pi sitting in your home. Okay, or he doesn't want to know how much bandwidth is being used by each of the nodes in your network. That is not his concern. His main concern is how the overall system which has been deployed is affecting his business. So That is where the idea of business intelligence comes in, and that is where a very high level of abstraction happens. So from the smaller level, you integrate the data and you move up higher and higher levels of abstraction, so that at the top management level, you get a summary of all that is happening. You abstract away all the technical details and you give them the idea of something which works at the level of the business. Right? So that is what we are talking about here. So at the application level, we are talking about the overall integration of the system. All these small things come together and you create APIs which can give them an idea of the overall working of the system, rather than looking at individual modules that are present in the system. So this is the idea of an application layer, and this is something which is customized for each application. So if you are an architect, network architect, you will be sitting at this for a very long period of time. You will be talking with the higher management of the company which is purchasing your product, and then you will be finding out you're creating a dashboard. You will be creating a database which will actually give them an idea of what is happening. The graphs, the HMI you will be creating will be for all these kind of applications which are at a higher level of abstraction. You are going to take away all the complexities that are involved in running the layer. Why? Because higher management people don't have time for this. They need to make business decisions based on the data which is coming in. Right? So that is what will happen here. All right. Do I make sense? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. So we are talking about application layer, which is at the topmost level. Okay. So next level is the services layer, the second layer. So this is where most of the problems arise. This and the network layer are the ones which create most of the problems, and this is where the stability of the system and the overall working of the system are critically dependent on. So you can see the entire system, that is including the hardware management protocols, the software management protocols, all of this are integrated in the services layer. You also include everything from the front haul to the back haul communications layer. Right? You've heard of something called back haul communication? Hello? No. Okay. So imagine you have a network, right? If you have a 2G network with you, the data is coming from the 2G network, but at the service provider level, the data, when they integrate all of it together, it becomes a very huge amount of data. So the protocols that are used for transferring such a large amount of data to their servers is different. So at the front, you may be seeing, or you may be using a 2G or 3G communication spectrum, communication protocols, but at the back end, you may be using something totally different. You could be using MPLS, you could be using several other layers. Okay, so that is what we are actually talking about when we talk about backhaul communications. So there are a lot of complexities involved when you are integrating a large amount of data, streaming data, all those things. So all that has to be handled by the services layer. Okay. So, and when it comes, and when you go at the device level, then you move to the communication network level, then you move on to the protocols, then you, on top of that, you put a common services layer which can talk to all of these applications in one shot. So this is where the common APIs which will be lying. So you will be creating a set of APIs which can talk to the lower levels, collect all the information, put it in a format which is a standard, and pass it on to all the applications that are asking for it. So this is where the overall creation of a standard API system happens. Okay, so this is where you do most of the stuff, but in between also this is relevant. The bottom three layers are also very important, because this is what most of the manufacturers or the people who are implementing the system on the field are interested in here. because you need to have device to device communication happening properly. The networks have to be integrated properly. The protocols have to be standardized. So all those things are very relevant to somebody who is working on the field. As an engineer, when you start out, these three layers are what you are more going to be interested in. Finally, common service layer is not a big deal because you have already got a set of defined APIs that your company may have already decided on. So you just have to connect it with the bottom layers, and that's all that has to be done. So it becomes a lot more easier. But unfortunately, as I was talking about, IoT does not have any standard communication network that is available, or a standard communication between devices and hardware. So that is where M2M, one M2M comes in. It kind of defines standards for all these layers one by one, so that there is a common standard for all manufacturers to manufacture devices, to integrate devices, and to come up with, and to help people come up with APIs which are standard in nature. Okay, so that is the idea. You can see here in the quotation that I have given here, this is what the goal of one M2M is. So you need to have a common framework which can connect all the devices in the field to application servers which reside in the cloud or data center. So there is no IoT without cloud now. So obviously that's what happens. Okay. The third layer is the network layer, which is the final or the kind of bottommost layer that you're talking about. Not the bottommost, but this is another important layer which kind of connects all the devices together. And this technologies which are used is, you will find 802.15, and you will have 801.11h. These are the two common standards which are used for communicating with devices. You can create wireless meshes using this and so on, because these standards are kind of already defined in the IEEE standard network. So it will not be very difficult for you to implement this. So you can write your own device firmware, you can write your own device drivers, or you can buy it from the market and integrate it into your own system. This is not very difficult because these standards are already frozen. You can also have connections like the power line communication. PLCC standards are also existing, which are typically used for smart metering kind of applications. You heard of something called the PLCC, power line carrier communication? No? How many of you have heard of PLCC, power line carrier communication? Nobody. Okay. Anyway, PLCC is something which kind of some of the electric utilities use to transfer data over power lines. So you can transfer data over high voltage power lines with the help of PLCC equipment. They are falling out of favor mainly because of the low bandwidth and the noise that comes in. But it is possible for you to create a system which can use PLCC equipment to transfer data. So this could be very ideal when you are using a smart meter, because your smart meter is anyway connected to the power system. You do not need an additional say cloud connectivity or anything like that to transfer data there. Power line is already coming, so you will need a PLCC communication box with you, and that's all you need. Reliable connections are possible. So you have all those kinds of standards which are used for applications, right? So this is what network does. Okay. So that is the three layers of your network, of your architecture of one M2M. And next we will go on to the IEEE World Forum IoT standards, which we'll be seeing in the next class. So right now I'll stop with this. If you have any queries, please go ahead and ask. We have, I think, about 10 minutes of time. Any questions? Anyone? Any questions?
No, sir.
No. Okay. Okay, so most likely what I will do is I will give you some small assignments from the next week onwards, so that you can have an understanding of what is going on and how the whole thing works. Okay, meanwhile, what I will suggest is you have a look at what is service oriented architecture, and you can also have a look at things like LoRaWAN and the ZigBee alliance. Other things I will be talking about later on anyway, but LoRaWAN can be, LoRa basically by itself can be a very interesting thing to work on if you are interested. Okay. We'll go into some other things as well, but you can buy LoRa devices if you want, but at least learn what the protocol is and how it works and so on. It'll be a good idea. Okay, so are there any questions?
So,
Yes, go.
why do we call the services layer as a horizontal framework? Because it's there is a hierarchy. Then why is it called horizontal framework? I don't understand what is the name.
No, it's horizontal because it is not dependent upon the application that you are going to use. Same,
Oh,
yeah, same. I mean, like APIs will be used across applications. So those APIs will connect to the application layer, which will be customized. So only the top layer needs to be customized as per user requirements. Remaining everything across applications remains same. So that's why it's called horizontal. Horizontal across applications.
okay, so okay.
So that is the only reason. Eventually, the idea is that the end use is your application. So you should not have a separate network architecture for smart metering and separate network architecture for connected vehicles and separate network architecture for home automation and separate network architecture for maybe let's say wildfire detection systems. All this can make the system a lot more complicated. So what we do is we just, for all different applications, we use the same network architecture all the way to the application layer. At the application layer, you tweak it for your application. You want to build a home automation, you put that layer on top of it. So underlying everything remains the same, only the top level application will change and you configure only that part.
So one part of the system will not affect the other.
And you can actually pull devices from your home automation network and put it in smart metering network without much change.
Okay, so
So that is why kind of manufacturers are also happy. They need to make devices which follow this. I mean, like they just have to do the stamp out the same thing over and over again. They don't have to create separate things for separate applications. Only at the configuration of the application level, you will see the changes. Remaining everything is kind of same.
okay, so thanks.
That is the advantage. Any other questions? Okay, so if there are no further queries, we will break for today, and please go through these details that we have seen so far. Okay, so you need to brush up a little bit on the communication protocols that are being used. What is LoRa? What is WAN? What is TCP/IP? So what is Wi-Fi? You may have to learn all those things if time permits. You use Wi-Fi and all those things all the time, so it will be a good idea that you kind of see what kind of protocols lie behind it and how the whole thing works. Right? So out of interest, I will not be asking questions on this in the periodicals, but it always kind of, because you are from CC, computer and communication. So digital communication is something that you should be very strong at. May not be there in your syllabus right now, but out of your own interest, you should be able to learn all these things. It's kind of understood that you should be doing this. Okay, so thank you all for attending. We'll continue in the next class. Bye.
Thank you, sir.